Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to call this hearing to order. Today, we've gathered to examine the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers budget request for fiscal year 2024, as well as the implementation of the recently passed Water Resources Development Act, affectionately known as WRDA 2022. This year, the President has proposed a budget of $7.4 billion for the Army Corps of Engineers, $7.4 billion for this year. And while that's larger than any other budget request for the Corps to date, the President's proposal is still less than the $8.7 billion that Congress provided in annual spending last year. To help us unpack the request and understand the Corps' implementation of WRDA 22, we're pleased to welcome our witnesses, Assistant Secretary Connor, welcome, good to see you, and General Spellman, General, Navy Salutes Army. Okay. Thank you both for joining us and for your ongoing service to our nation. The Corps' work is fundamental to keeping our economy moving forward. And as you may recall, the Corps manages our nation's ports and waterways, restores our ecosystems, and which are critical to fisheries, to tourism, to recreation, and advances flood management solutions to protect communities from coast to coast. In fact, 99% of our overseas trade goes through channels that the Corps helps to maintain. Let me repeat that. 99% of our overseas trade goes through channels that the Army Corps of Engineers helps to maintain. As the largest manager of our nation's water infrastructure, the Corps also plays critical role in job creation and job retention. In addition to employing nearly 37,000 civilian and military personnel, the agency's work spurs economic growth across our country to the tune of more than $50 billion annually. $50 billion annually. With that in mind, I'm sure that a number of our members will have some specific projects in their states that they want to ask both of you about today. The Corps has certainly been a vital partner in many parts of our economy in the first state of Delaware. In addition to delivering nearly $300 million in essential project funding for Delaware this year alone, the Corps recently approved permits to allow for an expansion of the Port of Wilmington. I'm pleased to share that Delaware is now set to build a new terminal at the port and bring hundreds of new jobs to our region, which includes several states, including New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. The Corps' work is possible because of the policies and studies, along with the projects and programs that our committee authorizes through WRDA. For a decade, this committee has led the effort to build biennial WRDA legislation with overwhelming bipartisan support. And last year, for example, the Senate passed the final WRDA 2022 legislation by a vote of 83-11. I can't tell you how often people say to me in Delaware, outside of Delaware, on the train, say, why don't you guys ever work together? And instead of likewise fighting with each other, we do work together. And this is a workhorse committee, and we have the numbers to prove it. That's a pattern we hope and expect to continue, timely, bipartisan reauthorizations, resulting in sound policies to address our nation's water resources needs. Today, I'm particularly interested in hearing, I think we're particularly interested in hearing about how the Corps' fiscal year budget for 2024 would help advance its mission and support the implementation of WRDA 2022. We also want to hear about any ongoing challenges that the agency faces so that our committee can continue to be a problem solver as we consider the next WRDA reauthorization. The Corps has an important and challenging mission. We recognize that even with historic funding, project demands still often outpace our investments. In the past, that has led the Corps having to make some tough choices, particularly in many smaller, more economically disadvantaged communities, including those in rural and tribal areas. Historically, these disadvantaged communities have been the last to have their needs met. That's why we've included provisions in the 2018 as well as the 2020 and the 2022 WRDA reauthorizations directing the Corps to increase its work with financially disadvantaged and underserved communities. I'm encouraged that the Corps' recently issued guidance begins to better serve these communities. And I know they appreciate it too. In addition, I'm eager to hear more about the Corps' progress. In Order 22, Congress instructed the Corps to take a more holistic approach when accounting for the impacts of climate change in the work that you do. And with that in mind, today is also an opportunity for our committee to hear about how the Corps is using and plans to use those authorities. We're acutely aware of the need to develop solutions that not only work today, but will still protect our country in the future. But as we are not alone in facing the challenges posed by climate change, the federal government needs to plan for the climate realities we face and will continue to face for as long as we're around as human beings and probably as a nation. These realities range from droughts in the West to sea level rise in the Gulf Coast, to floods from snowpacks melting in the Midwest and beyond. As a key partner for states and communities in addressing the impacts of climate change, the Corps must plan for these realities. And we know that failing to do so comes at a steep cost. In 2022, there were 18 climate disasters in the United States with damages of over $1 billion apiece. Let me just say that again. There were 18 climate disasters in the United States in 2022 with damages of over $1 billion each. Throughout the past 30 years, much of the Corps' funding has been provided in response to disasters, not in preparation for them. Not only do we need to proactively address the root causes of climate change, and we are, we need to also proactively make our infrastructure more resilient to the climate fuel extreme weather. In closing, my hope is that today's hearing will provide us with a better sense of the Corps' priorities and the direction it plans to take. General Spellman, Assistant Secretary Connor, we look forward to hearing your testimony and your insights today that will better inform our oversight and, of course, the 2024 WRDA bill. And I would just say, I know you have several members of your team here today, including a couple named Stacy. And I just want to say to them and to the other folks who are part of your team, uniformed and not, how much we appreciate from coast to coast, red states, blue states, every kind of state. We appreciate the great work you do for us, for our constituents, and for our country. And with that, let me turn to our ranking member, Senator Capito, for her opening remarks. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling the hearing today and for your ongoing commitment to our bipartisan oversight of the implementation of WRDA 2022. I look forward to hearing about the Corps' ongoing efforts to implement the law and then also your 2024 budget request. As ranking member of this committee, I recognize the important role that the Army Corps plays in safeguarding our communities and supporting growth. I live 1/4 of a mile from one of your waterways, so I see how important the work the Corps does in my own community. Since 2014, the committee has kept its biennial schedule of authorizing water resource projects and setting national policies for the Civil Works program of the Army Corps, and I look forward to continuing this track record next year. WRDA 2022 authorized 25 new projects and 6 modifications to existing projects around the country, including projects for navigation, flood and coastal storm risk management, and ecosystem restoration. And it authorized, and I think this was the largest number, more than 100 feasibility studies that will develop solutions to water resources challenges in the years ahead. WRDA 2022 also included several policy changes that will help the Army Corps better succeed, I believe, in the Civil Works mission. I would like to extend my appreciation to the staff at the Army Corps, and also in the Assistant Secretary's office for their continual engagement with the committee as we oversee the implementation of WRDA 2022 and prior WRDA legislation. As my colleagues on this committee know so well, the Army Corps also has important regulatory responsibilities under other federal laws. These responsibilities include reviewing permit applications from public and private entities that are seeking to undertake important infrastructure projects or economic development projects across the country. One of those private entities, Nucor, announced last year that Mason County, West Virginia, will soon be home to the company's newest steel sheet mill. This is really great news for the state of West Virginia, but also for the country. The committee has heard time and time again how product availability issues adversely impact the delivery of projects and the manufacture of goods. This mill will have the capacity to produce up to 3 million tons of American-made steel sheet per year, helping to alleviate availability issues for the industries that utilize this project and supporting compliance with the Buy American provisions, including those for the Corps' own construction projects. According to Nucor, it will also have one of the lowest carbon footprints of any sheet mill in the world. Most importantly, to me and to most of my fellow West Virginians, it will bring hundreds, if not more, permanent, great jobs to West Virginia, which we desperately need. In order for this mill to become a reality, Nucor submitted applications for permits under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act and Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1899 to the Huntington District. I was looking at that date, 1899. That's pretty long ago. The Army Corps and Nucor must work diligently and collaboratively through this process so that timely decisions of these applications can be made. The federal laws must be adhered to, while bureaucratic delays must be avoided. So, Assistant Secretary Connor and General Spellman, you're not surprised to hear me talk about this. I want to thank you for the personal attention that you have paid to these applications and look forward to continuing our engagement as we move forward. I appreciate your commitments to provide the district with resources it needs to review these applications and notify me of any challenges that the Army Corps has encountered. As I have previously reinforced with both of you, this plant is critical to the economic vitality of my home state and to improving the lives of constituents while supporting infrastructure and manufacturing across our country. I'll continue to stay on top of this, and we've talked about this already previous to this starting, and as I know you all will too. So thank you for that. Last year, the Army Corps also provided funding for the Kanawha River Basin Flood Risk Management Study. This study will focus on the area of West Virginia that was devastated in 2016, where we lost 26 people in a massive flash flood. Notably, the Corps has also made significant investment in the Lower Mud River Control Project in Milton, West Virginia. This funding will go towards constructing a levee and other measures to help ensure the long-term safety, prosperity of residents in the Milton area. So thank you very much for recognizing the importance of these projects to my state. The work of the Corps, and I'm sure each one of us could enumerate and probably will, projects in our state. The work of the Corps has and will continue to make a difference in communities across the state of West Virginia. Chairman Carper, I know before too long we will be kicking off the process for WARDA 2024, and I look forward to continuing our partnership to develop bipartisan legislation. So let me again reiterate my gratitude towards our witness, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Senator Capito. Thanks very much. She knows well. My family's from West Virginia, Beckley, just south of Charleston, and I still have quite a few relatives in the first state. And I just want to say, Senator Capito, I'm somebody who cares a lot about the Mountain State. I'm really delighted to hear about the economic opportunities that are being delivered, in no small part because of the Army Corps. So thank you doubly for that. Now we're going to turn to our witnesses. Before I do that, let me just say to our staffs, our side led by John Keene, and both sides, Democrat and Republican, as well as the members of our committee, all of your staffs, Blue States residents, we work together. We worked really well together on this legislation. It's a really important legislation. I think I can't say thanks enough to all who made our jobs relatively easy as we move forward to today's hearing. So my thanks to all of you. Okay, Assistant Secretary Connor has served in a variety of positions in the federal government, focusing on natural resources and water resources throughout his distinguished career. He was confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of the Army in November of 2021 and has been off and running ever since, immersing himself in all matters related to civil works programs. Mr. Connor, you're now recognized for your statement, and once you've given it, we're going to turn to the fellow in uniform right next to you, Secretary Connor.
Thank you. Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, and distinguished members, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the President's FY 2024 budget and the implementation of WARDA 2022. And thank you for the tenacious work of you and your staff in getting the Water Resources Development Act over the finish line last year. We and countless stakeholders rely on the biannual authorization to address new challenges and adjust existing authorities as circumstances warrant. This committee's work is incredibly important. As you know, the Army Civil Works Program serves three main missions: flood and storm damage reduction, commercial navigation, and aquatic ecosystem restoration, and supports related project purposes such as water supply, hydropower, and recreation. The FY24 budget request includes over $7.4 billion for the Army Civil Works Program, which is the largest request in history, and complemented by an additional $1.05 billion from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. These investments demonstrate President Biden's ongoing commitment to funding the construction of critical infrastructure projects that will strengthen our economy, protect people and property, and restore key ecosystems. It's important to note that the water resources challenges of today are not like those of yesterday. Weather extremes are increasingly the norm, so understanding vulnerabilities and increasing our preparedness is of the utmost importance. For that reason, the budget provides $86 million, the largest request in Corps' history, for research and development. The focus of this work will be on innovative solutions that address the emerging water resources challenges of the 21st century and achieves cost savings in the Civil Works program. The Army Civil Works budget focuses on the highest performing work within the three main missions of the Civil Works program. In developing the budget, consideration was also given to advancing three key objectives of the administration: decreasing climate risk for communities and the environment, promoting environmental justice in underserved communities and tribal nations, and strengthening the nation's supply chains. First, the Corps has always been in the resilience business, and climate-focused investments include more than $1.4 billion for construction of flood and storm damage reduction and aquatic ecosystem restoration projects. Second priority, the budget supports the administration's Justice 40 initiative through investments in 23 studies and construction of 33 projects to help disadvantaged and tribal communities address their water resources challenges. Priority 3, the budget facilitates safe, reliable, and sustainable commercial navigation to support U.S. competitiveness and improve the resilience of our nation's manufacturing supply chains, supporting American jobs and the economy. The administration's commitment to our coastal ports and inland waterways is represented by over $3.4 billion for the inland and coastal navigation projects, including $1.7 billion derived from the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. Looking deeper at the construction budget, it provides $653 million for aquatic ecosystem restoration, including $415 million to continue restoring America's Everglades and $67 million to support salmon recovery efforts in the Columbia River Basin. Other significant construction activity includes $655 million for dam safety at Prado Dam in California, $350 million for replacement of the Cape Cod Canal bridges, and $235 million to continue construction of the Soo Locks projects, which benefits our entire economy. In total, the FY 2024 construction program is funded at more than $2 billion. In addition to new projects, the budget invests in operation and maintaining the Corps' existing infrastructure and improving its reliability and performance by providing over $4.4 billion in the operation and maintenance account. Investigations and the recreation program are also provided significant funding as set forth in my statement, and the regulatory program is robustly funded at $221 million to support the administration's focus on permitting. Turning to WRDA, we are well into the initial steps of implementing the law. We held a public comment period and listening sessions earlier this year to gather input on the need for implementation guidance. At this time, the Army has identified 10 provisions of WRDA 2022 that will require implementation guidance documents, and the drafting is now underway. WRDA 2022 provided additional flexibility for the Army to assist disadvantaged and rural communities, including tribal nations, a theme continued from WRDA 2020. We look forward to using these tools to expand the range of communities we work with and for. We also look forward to engaging with each of you on the provisions of importance to the communities that you represent. To summarize, the budget makes critical investments that will benefit the American people and promote greater prosperity and economic growth for decades to come. WRDA 2022 provides the opportunity to solve water resources challenges facing communities, nurture sustainable aquatic ecosystems, and strengthen community resilience and the nation's economy as a fundamental part of the Army Corps' mission. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to the questions.
Thanks so much for your testimony and for your leadership. Now we're going to turn to General Spellman. General Spellman, you've been here before any number of times. We're happy to see you again. And I understand that you served in a number of a variety of positions within the federal government, focusing largely on natural and water resources throughout your distinguished career. How long have you served in the Army?
Sir, 37 years.
37. You started as a child. Didn't they have labor laws?
18, sir.
That's pretty impressive. Right. Were you prior enlisted?
No, sir.
Okay. Where'd you go to the military academy?
Military Academy at high school, yes, sir.
Yeah, good for you. General Spellman was confirmed as Assistant Secretary of the Army in November of 2021 and has been off and running ever since, immersing himself in all matters relating to the Civil Works program. That I've just read the wrong intro. Yeah, let's just start over. Let's just start over. So how long have you been? Really, 18?
Yes, sir.
General Spellman has been serving forever as the 55th Chief of Engineers and Commanding General of the Army Corps of Engineers. I was just checking to see if people are listening. So, serving since September 2020, before which he served as the Deputy Commanding General for Civil and Emergency Operation. He's no stranger to the Corps' Civil Works program or to this committee. And we're grateful for your distinguished service, longtime service. We look forward to hearing from you today. And you're welcome to begin your statement. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for that generous introduction, and good morning, everyone.
Which one did you like best? We can only pay you for one job. Welcome aboard.
Sir, Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, and distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to testify before you today, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss the fiscal year 2024 budget request for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's another record investment in our nation's Civil Works program. And I'm also pleased to discuss the ongoing implementation of the Water Resources Development Act of 2022, as well as other recent Water Resources Acts. This critical legislation provides us with the authorizations necessary to advance our Civil Works missions and enables critical policy transformations to address the changing needs of the nation's water resources infrastructure. Today, I look forward to discussing the status of important Corps projects and programs, as well as answering any questions the committee may have regarding the 2024 budget and recent WRDA implementation. Most importantly, I look forward to continuing to work with this committee, the Congress, and the administration to address the nation's critical water resources infrastructure needs. We greatly appreciate the committee's continued support of the Corps' program. In WRDA 2022, Congress authorized 25 new construction projects, 94 new feasibility studies, and 131 new environmental infrastructure projects. These studies and projects, when funded, will strengthen our supply chain, help tackle the climate crisis, advance environmental justice, and invest in tribal nations and underserved communities. With recent record-high appropriations, including the $1.4 billion of additional funding provided late last year as part of the Disaster Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2023, the Corps' Civil Works program has experienced significant growth over the past several years. This substantial level investment enables critical water resource projects to be studied and constructed, and it allows us to further develop innovative approaches to address some of our most pressing challenges through focused research and development. The fiscal year 2024 budget reflects a targeted approach to continue investing in our water resources programs to promote climate resiliency, which will benefit the nation's economy, our environment, and public safety now and well into the future. The budget also supports the Assistant Secretary's priorities for the Corps by upgrading our nation's waterways, protecting communities and ecosystems, better serving disadvantaged communities, investing in science and research and development, and then finally, sustaining and improving our communications and relationships with our many partners. The 2024 budget, when taken with other recent funding, as well as the authorizations from WRDA 22 and previous WRDA legislation, provides the Corps with what the Secretary calls a transformational opportunity to deliver water resource infrastructure projects that will positively impact communities across our great nation. We are also taking advantage of this opportunity to do two things. First, that's to transform our organization and decision-making processes to safely deliver quality projects on time and within budget. And second, to identify risks to how we are delivering our program. Our teams are hard at work seeking out new and better ways to mitigate or eliminate these risks so we can further strengthen the safety and security of communities across our country and our territories. By evolving our policies, programs, and operations, and placing increased focus on research and development, we are working to overcome impacts of challenges such as sea level rise, changes to precipitation patterns and hydrology, and other effects of climate change, including improvement to the resilience of our own Corps-owned and operated infrastructure. I will conclude by saying the Corps does not accomplish anything on its own. Delivering successful civil works projects is a shared responsibility. It's a team sport. We draw from our engineering expertise and build upon our relationships with our non-federal partners, our project stakeholders, and Congress to enable us to succeed. I look forward to continuing our great collaboration as we continue to pursue our vision, and that is engineering solutions for our nation's toughest challenges. So thank you again, Chairman Carper, Ranking Member Capito, and members of the committee. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
General, thank you so much for that testimony. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. The first one, let me just lay the groundwork, if I could. The 2024 budget request of $7.4 billion, which is the largest request by an administration for the agency. The Corps has received record high appropriations in recent years, as you know, last year receiving over $8.6 billion. This is in addition to significant resources from the bipartisan infrastructure law, as you referenced. Altogether, in the last 3 years, the Corps has received almost $50 billion between advanced and regular appropriations, almost $50 billion. This is more money than the Corps has ever received. And with this funding, Congress has entrusted you to plan, to construct, to maintain, and to operate our nation's water resources infrastructure. My question is, we're hearing that there are significant cost overruns on the bipartisan infrastructure law projects. This could cause these projects to become stalled or to require supplemental funding. Please tell us how the Corps and OMB are working together to avoid or to address these cost overruns and to make sure that the bipartisan infrastructure law projects are being delivered on time and on budget. Would you like to go? Who would like to go?
Sir, I'll start. Sir, first I would acknowledge these are clearly historic times for the Army Corps of Engineers. You mentioned the Civil Works Program. When you add in the work we're doing for the Army, the Air Force, the Veterans Administration, today it's a $92 billion program, the largest we've ever seen. Coupled that historic program with some unique challenges that we're experiencing across the country. When you talk to our contractors that do this work, number one is labor availability of skilled tradesmen. That's the number one cost driver that we're seeing on our projects.
Yeah, we hear that all over our state, and I think we hear that all over our country.
Yes, sir, and different impacts in different states, but a close second are material prices. Timber is coming down, steel is leveling off, but we're still seeing 40-year highs on glass products, on asphalt products, and coating. So what are we doing? First of all, we want to take advantage of Section 8155. That's the 902 holiday. We don't want to lose momentum on any project that we have underway. For a $92 billion program, we've been told we need about 500 cost engineers in the Army Corps. Last year, this time, we had 350. Today, we have 422. So we want to give better estimates to the Secretary, and we're working hard to hire the remaining 78. We're working hard also on alternate suppliers. When we have long lead items on switch gears or HVAC systems, we're working with Defense Logistics Agency, and they have given us opportunities to cut the delivery time, in some cases a half to a third. And again, sir, you have our commitment. One of the criteria when we take our project recommendations to secretaries, we want to finish everything that we start, and we remain committed to that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Secretary, if you'd like to add to that, please do.
Absolutely. Just some additional thoughts real quick. I do think it's important that we do more frequent updates, certified cost estimates, so that we are up to date and transparent with respect to the costs that we have. And I think that's been some of the issue, and General Spellman has highlighted how the Army Corps is moving in that direction. I would just note, for the record, he mentioned the $92 billion program that now exists. That's basically with 38,000 employees. A decade ago, that was about $37 billion with about 37,000 employees. So we're working about the same number of employees, slightly more these days, on over twice as large a program. So it's quite the challenge. And I think there's a number of innovations from using an enterprise-wide system of the Corps, bringing in help from other districts, divisions to support the work that I think is incredibly important. A couple other quick thoughts. Reserve funds, we did it in BBA 2018. We've done some of that with the bipartisan infrastructure law. We have reallocated some funds. I should say we have reserved some funds and then allocated those funds to address some of the cost impacts and trying to get at some of the increases. We are looking at allocation. Some of our sponsors who have interest in multiple projects are looking at how we might reallocate funds to finish one project before we start another one. We've also got to talk about rescoping with our project sponsors. So there's a number of strategies that we're discussing internally and with OMB to try and get at these cost increase issues.
Now, let me ask one other quick question. With respect to climate change, as you know, as a senator from the lowest lying state in our country, we're concerned about the fact that climate change is driving sea level rise and extreme weather events in my state and, frankly, in a lot of other states around our country. WERDA 2022 includes authorities for the Corps to address extreme weather, including sea level rise, when it designs any project, large or small. Question, with these new authorities, how will the Corps work to implement these provisions and make non-federal sponsors aware of the law to ensure that the impacts of climate change are fully accounted for in all project designs, please?
Yes, sir. I'll start. So first, I'm proud to report that the Corps has been using sea level rise curves in our coastal projects for the past 12 years, and we're working every day to improve the modeling of that. We have a lot more work to do on our inland systems, and proud to report that our research and development budget has quadrupled in this president's budget, and that's going to allow us to get after things like forecast-informed reservoir operations. Very, very successful pilots ongoing today out on the West Coast. But how can I take that technology and modify it to accommodate for some of the changing precipitation patterns we're seeing, say, on the upper or lower Missouri, or what we're seeing down in Florida? So we're very thankful for that investment, and we think we can do more, but we've got to focus on our R&D program to get after it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Secretary?
You're going to hear a lot of repetitive items here because
I like to say repetition can be good.
the R&D initiative that we've got in the budget, I think, is incredibly important to ensure that we're constantly updating the models that we use as part of the engineering design work, whether it be on our coast with sea level rise or the hydrology that we're trying to get after right now. So I think that's fundamental to the whole effort. I think General Spellman also highlighted a need that we have, whether it's new infrastructure or existing infrastructure. We need to make that infrastructure work harder and serve multiple benefits. I think that's incredibly important as we face new extremes, whether it be drought or whether it be significant precipitation events, the 7 1 in 1,000 events we had just in the continental U.S. last year. So we've got to look at the existing infrastructure and how it might operate differently, as well as integrate those extremes into the designs in our new infrastructure.
All right, and thank you both for those responses. Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank both of you. I'm going to go, right as I mentioned in my opening statement about the new Corps permit applications. General Spellman, can you provide me with an update, brief update, with new Corps Section 404 permit, and also in particular the Section 106, the National Historic Preservation Act?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I want to thank you for hosting the meeting with the new Corps executives and our leadership in your office. So since that meeting, several developments. The West Virginia State Historic Preservation Officer has concurred with our assessment that the 5 cultural sites in the Phase A properties do in fact qualify for consultation. So we've sent letters to the 3 tribes to initiate that consultation. They've asked us for some time. These are 800-page reports, so we'll get that scheduled. We did receive new Corps' cultural assessment on the Phase B properties. These are if you recall, the properties closer to the Ohio River. 2 additional sites there that will add to that consultation effort. And then we did receive the feedback that we requested on the Nybert sites, ma'am. That's the property just to the south with the laydown yard. That response included some case law that we're researching with our attorneys and those from new Corps, and then we'll make a decision here shortly whether or not that is part of the project footprint.
Well, I appreciate that. It sounds as though there's constant contact here with communication, and so I appreciate that from both of you. Assistant Secretary Connor, I wanted to ask about congressionally directed spending. The Army Corps' budget request includes roughly $5 million for 9 feasibility studies that were included in the congressional directed spending items in fiscal year 2022. I think the administration's incorporation of these items is a step in the right direction. Will the Corps continue to incorporate CDS items, particularly new starts, into future budget requests? And if the answer to that is yes, can you please describe the process that the Corps uses to identify which of these items would be included?
Well, we will certainly proceed in accordance with the congressionally directed spending items that are highlighted in the annual appropriations bills. And through our work plans, that is how we'll make the selections and move forward. I think it's not just the projects themselves that are having significant cost increases. We're seeing that in the investigation side of things too. The investigations we're doing are more complex. The $3 million mark that we've used based on 2014 legislation, in my view, is a bit outdated. Those costs need to be updated. We're almost 10 years later. And from that standpoint, I think we've still got a good track record of taking congressionally directed items, particularly in the investigations account, then following up through work plan, through the President's budget, and through the additional resources, supplementals that we've had of maintaining progress towards completion of those studies. As General Spellman said earlier, completing our work, whether it's projects or investigations, is paramount and incorporated into every aspect of our decision-making processes.
Thank you. General Spellman, I championed a provision in WRDA 2022 that directs the Army Corps to submit to the committee on an annual basis a report on the timeframes for completing environmental reviews for water resource development projects. So we're talking a lot about permitting. We had a hearing last week on permitting. You're obviously a critical part of that process. So can you solve our permitting reform problem? I'm just kidding. That was not my real question. If you'd like to weigh in on that too, I was going to ask you the status of the implementation of the provision that you will report to us on an annual basis. But any comments and any words of wisdom you can give us as we're trying to work a bipartisan permitting reform process would be greatly appreciated.
No, ma'am, I think the best policy and decisions will come from the data. So this is Section 8134. You've asked for 8 different data sets that deal with how many categorical exclusions do we do? How many environmental assessments? How many environmental impact statements? How long does that take? No issue. We collect that data and happy to provide that to you in this annual report.
Okay, and now on to permitting. Do you have a comment on that?
Man, we work hard. You know, we do 80,000 regulatory actions each year. And the ones that rise to this chamber, there's a handful. And so you have an incredibly hard team out there working every day. I just want to thank the Congress for the additional funding that you gave us in the regulatory program and the bipartisan infrastructure law. It funded 200 additional regulators that we so desperately need out in the field. We have hired 150 of those, and we're working to hire the remaining 50 as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
All right, Senator, looks like Senator Padilla is next in the lineup, and after that, Senator Ricketts.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chair. Secretary Connor, I want to start by thanking you for your partnership on so many critical issues that we've been working on in California, from maintaining our seaports, which handle 40% of containerized cargo arriving to the United States, to protecting communities from flood risks posed by more than 30 atmospheric river storms that we experienced this last winter. The Army Corps is clearly critical to California. And I particularly appreciate your willingness to work with the town of Pajaro and Watsonville to accelerate the Pajaro River Flood Protection Project in order to safeguard the community from future natural disasters. We've spoken about it directly. I know you've had a chance to visit and see firsthand. But now I want to urge the Corps to provide the emergency assistance necessary to these communities who have been left behind in so many ways and are oftentimes disproportionately impacted by natural disasters like what we've experienced in recent months. You know, as you know, one of the biggest impediments to protecting the community of Pajaro before the recent storms was the Army Corps' benefit cost ratio. Again, we've talked about this privately, want to raise it in today's hearing, because this is fundamentally an issue of equity. The Pajaro River project was long overlooked because it would protect, imagine this, it would protect a low-income community with what is considered, relatively speaking, lower property values. And the Army Corps' rigid benefit cost ratio formula typically disadvantages projects that would protect communities like this one compared to communities with higher property values. So this was an issue that I discussed in a budget hearing with OMB Director Shalonda Young in March. She and I agreed that it is patently unfair to have a system that says poorer communities will not receive the same level of flood protections as wealthier communities. She committed to work with me to permanently fix this glaring inequity. So I want to ask for the record, Secretary Connor, do you agree that the benefit-cost ratio systematically disadvantages underserved communities like Pajaro, and will you also commit to working with us on a permanent fix?
Senator, I appreciate the question. I absolutely agree with you that whether they be rural, minority communities are systematically disadvantaged by our current benefit-cost ratio processes, and I will absolutely work with you. We have an initiative in place that I think you're aware of to institute a rulemaking to address principles, requirements, and guidelines, how we will apply them to better balance environmental, social, as well as economic benefits.
Great. And just to be clear, this is not just for the sake of current projects that in many cases are overdue, but for all future projects as well. I want to, in my time remaining, raise one more issue. In California, we are facing a special kind of weather whiplash right now. I've talked about the storms that led to record snowpack. And in fact, snowpack in California right now measures about 254% of average. And 6 feet of snow sits in many places that were bare ground just a year ago. As this historic snowpack melts this spring, we're seeing the reemergence of Tulare Lake, a lake that has been dry for 25 years, but has the capacity to hold 3 to 4 times more water than Lake Tahoe, just to give you a perspective here. At risk are communities like Corcoran, whose levee is already facing erosion challenges from previous storms. Secretary Connor, the Corps operates the 4 major dams that impact the Tulare Lake Basin. Can you share with the committee what the Army Corps is working on and in collaboration with the state of California to bolster communities in the low-lying areas of the San Joaquin Valley against potential flood risks?
Absolutely, Senator. General Spellman and I were both out there just a few weeks ago for the ribbon cutting on Lake Isabel, the dam safety project. So, we are operating the 4 plus facilities that we have. I mentioned Lake Isabel because we have 200,000 of additional capacity now to store water in the middle of this flood control event because we are completing work that we started over a decade ago. So what we do matters today matters for the next crisis. Second of all, we immediately started to improve our interagency coordination between the Corps, Department of Water Resources, and local officials during the event itself. I got several calls, so did General, and the leadership of the Corps to better coordinate how we were making releases so that we'd prepare the levee district boards, their operators, as well as the state. And now we visited the command center outside of Fresno not too long ago. So we're coordinating those operations to ensure that we have the best information possible for people to manage the system throughout down to Tulare Lake. Lastly, I would just mention the state of California's partnership. It was rewarding to see the enthusiasm amongst our day-to-day operators in incorporating data that the state of California was providing with their LiDAR monitoring of snowpack on a real-time basis, giving up-to-dates of what snowpack was there, how quickly it was coming off. That will greatly improve our operations so that we can manage this flood risk as best possible. It's pretty overwhelming, though, as you noted.
Thank you very much. And in closing, just imagine that, utilizing technology and science and data to inform decision-making. What a concept. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those questions. I was just saying, as an aside to Senator Capito, I used to be stationed in the Navy in California. The idea of two senators representing a state that large, that diverse. How many people live in California now?
Nearly 40 million, Mr. Chair.
That's amazing. That's amazing. We're at 1 million. 1 million. So there you go. All right. Next in our questioning is going to be Senator Ricketts, and then it'll be Senator Cardin. Senator Ricketts, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman Cocker. I appreciate it. And Secretary Connor, thank you very much for being here, and General Spellman. General Spellman, I'm going to focus my remarks on the Army Corps. I was previously the governor of Nebraska, so I've got a fair amount of experience with specifically the Omaha district of the Army Corps. And I'll start by complimenting Colonel Himes, who's currently the person in charge there and Colonel Hudson before him for their efforts to reach out and have a good relationship with the state of Nebraska with regard to communication and so forth. However, my overall experience with the Army Corps is poor. And there's a lot of things I'd love to have the time to talk to you about. We got limited time, so I'm going to focus on one. First of all, at some point, I hope we do have an opportunity to talk about the Army Corps' management of the Missouri River, how they make determinations of how much storage they're keeping upstream and water flows and so forth. But today, I'm going to focus on one of the issues that is also very important, which Ranking Member Capito talked about, which is permitting reform. So I'm going to share with you some of my experiences that I had. First of all, one of the things that our local natural resource district was trying to do, because they're responsible for flood control, is raise the levees around Offutt Air Force Base. I'm sure you're familiar with Offutt Air Force Base is the site of Strategic Command that controls our nuclear forces. It's very important. 55th Wing as well. It took the Army Corps of Engineers 6 years to get a permit to raise the levees around Offutt Air Force Base. It came just as construction was supposed to start in March of so it would have allowed for construction to start in the spring of 2019. 2019 was also the year that we had historic flooding in Nebraska, the most widespread flooding in our state's history. Now, the reason they were trying to raise levees is because they knew from previous experience that the water was going to raise and they needed to raise those levees. The flooding that happened in 2019 covered the airstrip, damaged dozens of buildings, and cost the taxpayers of this country nearly $1 billion. If the Army Corps had delivered the permit in just 4 years, that could have been avoided. But it took 6 years. And that's not the only example of that. We'll get back to this one as well, but our 616-613 took 7 years to get a permit. I want to talk about that maybe in a little bit later. Another example of permitting where we didn't have good communication or didn't get good explanation is Highway 275. It's a 2-lane highway we're expanding to a 4-lane highway. And the Army Corps of Engineers insisted on a full-blown environmental impact study instead of an environmental assessment. But I want to focus on the permitting side because I've got lots of questions about why it would take this long. Do you measure how long it takes to get a permit done for the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yes, sir.
How long does it take?
An individual permit on average for the 80,000 that we do each year is 11 months.
11 months. Did you do a review of why it took 6 years to get a permit for those levees around Offutt Air Force Base?
Sir, I don't know all the history behind those 6 years. I can
So
do that
when you
research. I don't
have
know.
a project that is such an outlier, if you say it's 11 months and one happens in 6 years, you don't have a process to go back and say, hey, what happened here? Why is it taking so long?
I don't have that information today.
Well, I would encourage you to put controls in place to do that. We did a lot of permitting reform when I was governor of Nebraska to be able to take time, to reduce the time it takes for us to be able to issue permits at the state. We use a process called Lean Six Sigma. It's a process improvement methodology. There's several others out there you could use. But that is a way that helps you process map so that you can reduce duplicated steps. To me, again, based upon my experience with Colonel Himes and Colonel Hudson, you've got a systematic problem because you've got good people there, and maybe it's only my experience in the Omaha district, but we have a problem there. So, for example, I'm going to go back to the R616, 613 levy, and it taking 7 years to get that permit. Again, another outlier. I presume you don't have any specific knowledge of that, but it cost $6 million to get that permit for the Natural Resource District. The total project cost was $45 million, was what it was projected. Do you believe it should cost 13% of a project to get your permit?
Sir, I don't know the details here on what modeling requirements were necessary. I don't know the details of your question.
But do you think permitting should take up 13% of the cost of a
I
project?
don't have the data behind this, sir. I'd love to follow up with you once I know more.
So you don't have a ballpark on what you think permitting should cost as an overall project?
I don't hear this morning, not for this particular project.
Well, I'm not, just in general. I'm just saying in general. Do you have, like, how much should a permit cost, like, what percentage of a project should a permit be?
Sir, I don't have that figure here.
Okay, well, General, I think that that's part of the problem you've got is that you don't think about the overall scope of what you should be doing to provide service to the taxpayers here. I strongly encourage you because we do need to have permitting reform here. We can streamline these processes without sacrificing any sort of quality here. But to me, there is no reason why it should take 6 or 7 years to issue a permit to districts. Another area is maintenance. It's taking 2 years to get maintenance permits. So that's something that should be done on an annual basis, but you can't do maintenance annually if it's taking 2 years. So my time has expired here, Colonel, or General. Maybe I'll have an opportunity to have another round of questions here, maybe not. But this is why I think it's so important that we look at looking at permitting reform, looking at our processes, seeing how we can streamline them so we can turn these things around in a better time frame, because it will be important to preventing damage and also save taxpayers money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. You said earlier, I think, General, you mentioned a number of permits that you process or say grace over in a year. What was that? Do you remember?
So it's about 80,000 regulatory actions. I think the first step, for Senator Ricketts, just to respond, I think the first step in permitting reform you have helped us with, and that is resourcing the program. I don't know the details of why this took 6 years. I also don't know how many permit actions were on that particular regulator's desk at the moment. So again, this funding has greatly helped us. It'll help us serve us through 2026, and I think an important part would be funding that program into the future.
All right, thank you. We've been joined by Senator Cardin, who has, as some of you will recall, he's decided he does not want to be a United States Senator for the next 100 years. And he's gone, but we're stuck with him for the next, I think, 20 months.
I think I might have to defend myself here. Let me tell you, I enjoy serving on almost all the committees I serve on. I'm not sure this one,
Ben has the misfortune of having to sit next to me on not one committee but two, right. And we've been, and also to be like right alongside our border. We share borders from north of our state all the way down to Ocean City, and but it's a joy. And he and his wife Myrna come to our state from time to time. We have just great affection for them. So we look forward to working you really hard for the next the 20 months, and we're going to get one hell of a lot done. We already have.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first, it's a pleasure to serve on this committee. It's one of the great committees in the United States Senate. We work together, and I appreciate that very much. I started working with the Army Corps in 1967, my first year in the Maryland General Assembly. So go back a few years on some of these issues, and started working on the Chesapeake Bay back with Governor Hughes, really, when he became governor, the Chesapeake Bay program. So it's been a long run in regards to the partnership. And General Spellman, I want you to know that our district, Colonel Pinchason's doing a fabulous job. The communication is excellent. I'm glad you got more resources on the regulatory front. It was needed. There's no question about that. But the relationship and the transparency has been outstanding, so just really wanted you to know that. Secretary Connor, thank you for your attention, particularly on our Mid-Bay project. I mention that because Poplar Island was really a game changer in regards to using beneficial use of materials from dredging to do environmental restoration, and it provided a friendly place for us to be able to keep our channels open for commerce, which was always a controversial issue in Maryland politics, but no longer is it a controversial issue. As a result, we now have Mid-Bay, and thank you again for your personal attention. We had a little challenge to make sure we got the construction dollars that there. We were initiating it, then the administration came in, the Army Corps came in, and we appreciate the funds that are there. Mid-Bay will keep us for about another 40 years. So I'm going to let the future legislatures figure out what we do after 40 years. But are we on target to make sure that Mid-Bay moves forward? And if you just could comment on that, I would appreciate it.
Yes, Senator Cardin, as a 24-year Maryland resident before I relocated back out west, thank you very much for your service, sir. With respect to Mid-Bay, we are on target right now to move forward. We have initiated the project itself. We are good through FY 2024 with the $84 million provided under the bipartisan infrastructure law, and then the $5 million in additional appropriations. But I do think we will be looking at the need for resources in 2025. This is a very significantly sized project, but as you pointed out, win, 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 I think is how I referred to it, between the long-term certainty for the harbor and the economic activity that supports, the restoration of the islands and the habitat and aquatic ecosystems and the coastal wetlands that it will provide, the benefits overall with respect to sequestering carbon when we restore those coastal wetlands, as well as the protection of the Maryland coast when we rebuild these barrier islands. So this is a really important project. It's a demonstration of what we can do with valuable material instead of just putting it in placement areas. So I appreciate Maryland's leadership in developing the program so that we could be a partner in this.
And for my colleagues, Popular Island was one time a habitable island. When we started the restoration, there was just a few acres that remained. Mid-Bay was one time habitable, and now it's just a few acres, and we're restoring it. I know my colleagues appreciate the challenges of trying to find sites for dredge material. It's not easy. And Popular Island's located in a basically mid-shore of the eastern shore of Maryland, which is accepted it, not only accepted it, brags about the fact of what's there. It's going to become a real magnet for the economy of the region because it's attracting wildlife and it is a plus for the community. So we've been able to really make this a win-win situation, and it couldn't have been done without your support. So thank you, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate that very much. I want to move on to a second priority I have, which are the small harbors. They can't compete with the large Army Corps projects on the economic benefits, but they're critically important to the local economy. So in the last WRDA bill, we included language that asked you to prioritize the consideration of the smaller projects so that we can help our smaller communities deal with dredging, which is so important to their viability and continuation. Can you just share with us how you're going about trying to make those types of priority judgments, either General or Secretary? General?
Yes, sir. I had a great conversation with Colonel Pinchason on this. Every year, we have 90 shallow harbors in your state, and we have the capability each year to maintain about 10 of them, and we've got to do better. One of the things that we're discussing is we've got to get better usage data for these 90 small ports, and so we've got to, right now, when I send up my justification sheets to the Secretary, it's largely anecdotal, and we have to do better on providing the data that would support the budget recommendation. That is one idea, sir.
Well, I appreciate that. And then lastly, this committee has provided such additional resources in regards to environmental infrastructure. I appreciate that there was authorization for my state, substantial authorization for environmental infrastructure. I know that's going to require funding moving forward, but it also requires technical capacity to take advantage of this. So I would just ask you how you are prioritizing being able to analyze the opportunities that are there with the matching with the funding made available by the Congress.
Can't think of any more of an oversubscribed program than environmental infrastructure at this point in time. I think in this last WRDA bill, there was $4.2 billion in authorizations in environmental infrastructure, and we recognize the value it has to many communities. I think that $4.2 billion was over double what had previously been authorized over 2 decades at least. So Journey of 1,000 Miles begins with a few steps. We have the first budget request for environmental infrastructure. Yes, it's modest, but I think it's a turning point to recognize how valuable this program is given all the array of challenges. We are another provider of services that can address a lot of communities' needs, whether it be water supply, wastewater, all the smaller projects. So we are looking at how we can advance our support in conjunction with the very significant funding provided by Congress. I think this is going to be a work in progress, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I understand from your announcement this last week that you were first elected to the state legislature 58 years ago? Is that correct? At the age of 12?
Yes. Yeah. 1966.
No, in other words, your wife was 12.
You can do the arithmetic. I'll let everybody know. Your arithmetic might be a little, it might be a little bit, it's been about almost 57 years, but it'll be 58 by the time I complete this term.
That's amazing.
It's been an interesting run. I ran when I was in the state, ran when I was a law student at the University of Maryland. They thought it would hurt my class standing, but I got on the committee that had the budget of the University of Maryland School of Law and did very well in law school.
In adversity lies opportunity. Well, it's we're happy for you, sad for us, but we look forward to make the next 20 months count very much. You bet. Okay, Senator Wicker, you're next, and Senator Fetterman, you're in the on-deck circle. So we'll turn to you after Senator Wicker. Go ahead, Senator Wicker.
Mr. Chairman, I'm getting older by the minute sitting over here. But I want to thank the Secretary for his help in Mississippi. Mr. Secretary, you've been visiting with us several times, and we appreciate it and look forward to having you again. As you know, we have had a long time, decades-long flooding problem in the Pearl River Basin. And so today I want to talk to you about the Pearl River Basin Flood Control Project. You were kind enough to visit with us last August, usually the driest month in Mississippi, and perhaps providentially, we had a terrible flood in Jackson while you were there, and you were able to see firsthand the problem that we've had for years and years and years. This involves the capital city of our state, the largest municipality in our state, and the largest county, and also two of our other most popular counties, Rankin County and Madison County. And it seems that we are getting to a point with the Pearl River Flood Control Project that we're about to really make some progress. In just 2 months ago, Mr. Secretary, you issued a memorandum for Lieutenant General Spellman. The memo outlines a 2023 timeline for this Pearl River Flood Control Project. This would be initial public engagement this month, May of this year. June, finalize the draft report of the project. July and August, complete environmental reviews and revise the project report based on public comments. September, review the final report. And fall of this year, a decision by you, Secretary Connor, on the project. And also, the memo mentions that there should be a sense of urgency within the Corps to provide the people of Jackson and surrounding areas with effective solutions to their flooding. So how are we doing on this, and are we going to be able to adhere to the timeline which you presented month before last?
Senator, thank you for hosting last August. I think those moments are pretty significant, and there was some kind of sign with the amount of rain that we both experienced when we were turning the project, and then we came back and allocated very significant resources to move forward with the project, not just the completion of the studies and this aspect, but also moving forward with project construction. So we do see it as a high priority. We are moving forward well. We have a very whole-of-office approach between my office, Army Corps headquarters, the division, and the district in working through issues on a constant, ongoing basis and working with the local sponsor to fill in any holes that exist with respect to the feasibility report that they provided us. So there are some issues that need to be addressed. I think we are generally consistent with the schedule that I outlined, although we might be in the 30, 60-day range of having to extend that because of some of the technical work that needs to be supplemented. But we will engage the public in May of this year. We will move forward with the environmental reviews, take that input, and try and move forward to ensure, and basically, we've got to check all the boxes, which is this has got to provide, the local plan has to provide the same amount of flood protection that was envisioned originally. It's got to be environmentally acceptable. It can't impact downstream communities or states. And we've put a fourth criteria on there. It can't impact the other infrastructure needs that are being addressed through other mechanisms for Jackson, Mississippi. And so that review is going to be a thorough one. I'll keep you posted on the timeline. It may shift a little, but this will continue to be an all-hands-on-deck approach, Senator.
So if it shifts, it will be a matter of weeks, you think?
30 to 60 days is what I'm anticipating at most based on what we know right now.
After decades and decades of working on this, I suppose I could accept a matter of 30 or 60 days. The memorandum also states that the Corps will look at comprehensive benefits that may be derived from the proposed project. I know you're aware that we have a water system problem in Jackson, and just so many infrastructure problems as well as economic development disadvantages. So can you assure us that the final flood control project will adhere to your direction that it provide comprehensive benefits and take all of those into consideration?
Absolutely, Senator. The team has taken that to heart. We will ensure that we meet the 4 criteria that I just mentioned, but we also want to understand the collective additional benefits that the community sees from this flood control project and ensure that we document that and highlight those as we do our work.
Well, let me just say, I cannot tell you how much this means to us in Mississippi and how appreciative we are that the Corps of Engineers is at this point really focused in on this. It will mean the world to a great number of residents in this flood-prone area. So we're very grateful for your help.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah. All right. Senator Wicker, thanks for those questions. Next, I'm going to recognize Senator Fetterman. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to run off to the Finance Committee for a few minutes, and I'll be back shortly. And after Senator Fetterman, there'll be Senator Kramer, and Senator Kelly has graciously agreed to hold the gavel while I'm out of the room. Thanks. Thank you. All right. And with that, Senator Fetterman, you're recognized. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks.
Lieutenant General Spellman, I want to start by discussing the Lower Mon project in southwestern Pennsylvania. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Locks dams 2, 3, and 4 in the Monongahela River are one of the oldest currently operating facilities on the river, and they experience the highest volume of the commercial traffic. Modernizing and improving and navigating would reduce the bottlenecks delays, I'm assuming. The Army Corps has replaced the 100-day-old dam in Braddock, and I actually was the mayor of that community. And I remember going on a tour, when I was mayor years back with Bob Casey, too, now is my mentor here in the Senate here in Pennsylvania. And one, thank you for that work there, because that has been very helpful and transformative. With that being as it is, do you have a lime time for the Locks Dam and removal of Elizabeth and the new larger lock construction for Charleroi? What benefits residents can you expect when it may or may not be finished?
Yes, sir. First, the timeline. The new lock at Charleroi will be operational this December of 2023, and then we'll have the dam removed lock and dam removed at Elizabeth in December of 2025. And sir, the benefits are immense. If the new lock at Charleroi will be able to pass 9 barges at a time. 9 barges, that equates, the cargo on 9 barges equates to 600 trucks on the road, 600 diesel engines, 600 drivers, and it just drives.
600 trucks? Really? That's the equivalent?
Yes, sir, 600.
Wow.
And so the economic benefit to that when we did this feasibility study was $200 million a year. And so that lock renovation is going to pay for itself in 5 years. These inland waterways, sir, they're national treasures, and we appreciate all the leadership from Congress in helping us maintain and modernize them.
And I kind of, just like my colleague, Senator Wicker, share my thanks and appreciation for the work that that is done. And again, living right there, I can say the kind of impact that it has there. So really, I'm just grateful for that. I have a second question, and that's the Secretary Connor. I understand that there are a number of sections of the WRDA 220, and I will need a formal implementation and guidance, including the scope and flood risk management feasibility studies. This provision is important for climate change, and it will consider impacts on our communities. How can the Corps looking to implement the provision in the face of climate change, and what more can be done?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I think it's a very important one, and as I mentioned earlier, I just want to assure you, it is one of that section is one of the ones that we will be issuing implementation guidance on, and we've already got that process underway. I would just note that we are not waiting for that guidance. I think the concepts incorporated in that provision are consistent with the directive that was my predecessor issued, that we should be looking at comprehensive benefits as we analyze and do our studies. And that comprehensive benefits necessitates that we be looking at climate change and new challenges for any of the water resources infrastructure projects that we do. So the breadth of review that I think is anticipated by that particular section will be good for us to document, to move forward and incorporate that as fundamental to our studies, but we are already looking at those challenges right now and trying to incorporate them in the work that we do.
Thank you. And I cede the remaining of the time towards Chairman Kelly.
Thank you, Senator Fetterman. Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. And thank you both for being here. And right up front, I too appreciate not only the work you do, but the accessibility that both of you have given to me has been generous. And I hopefully it's helpful to your work, but it's certainly helpful to mine. And so with that, Mr. Connor, the ice has finally melted on most of the Missouri River up in North Dakota, but it's been a long winter. But as you know, as we've talked about, I spend a lot of time with the Standing Rock tribe and the leadership down there. Chairwoman Janet Elkire, Vice Chairman Frank Jamerson, especially interested in your projects. And I know you've said that you'd like to go down there. I really hope we can get something scheduled this summer. And I'm very committed to it, and I hope you are as well, to get down there and just spend some time with them. They have some wonderful projects. As you know, they have an incredible water resource down there, and we just would sure like to see you. And I think together, I think the two of us could do some good. So we'd love to host you.
I would just like to let you know we'll be there for the executive leadership meetings with the Corps this coming week, and I will spend a little bit of time with the tribe. But Senator, there's a lot of things going on up there. I would be happy to make a return engagement with you. I share your views. I
appreciate that very much, and I know that Frank and Janet and the others are going to be grateful just to hear that. General Spellman, I also want to thank you for extending the comment period for the EA on the Snake Bank embankment, Snake Creek embankment. Really, really important. And I want you also to know, I've talked to the governor, I've talked to the economic developers, and they're going to get you all the information that they need. At least the ball's in their court now to make a good assessment. My only admonition would be just to, again, stress the importance of an all-encompassing perspective that recognizes that provides water for about 50% of the population of North Dakota, obviously important to development, economic development, some billions of dollars actually worth of projects that will require that water. So thanks for extending that.
Yes, sir, and we remain on path to remove that 43-foot head differential at the Snake Creek embankment by the end of this calendar year, sir. We'll subsequently update the water control manual, and then we'll mitigate that risk with an increased inspection regime should the water elevation reach those levels.
Appreciate that a lot. Obviously important project. To both of you then, I think it was just last week. Time is so deceiving around here. Our weeks are short, but they seem like they're long from time to time. Anyway, Senator Heinrich and I introduced the Lakes Act. It's the Lake Access Keeping Economies Strong Act, and I know the Corps hasn't taken an official position on the legislation, but your team's been very helpful and in providing the information and technical support to help us draft the legislation. What it does, for those who don't know, it expands the opportunities to improve and develop the recreational facilities. A lot of people don't think of the Corps of Engineers as a recreational manager, but boy, it's incredible. Some of the best assets that we have in North Dakota are your assets. And what it does two things basically. It allows the Corps to retain recreation fees at the at the area that the sites where they're collected. And this is something, as you know, in your background, Secretary, from BOR, it's common throughout the federal government, just not with the Corps of Engineers. The other thing that it does is it allows the Corps, gives them more latitude to partner with non-government organizations, support organizations, nonprofit entities. And so, again, thanks to you, your staff, they've been very helpful. If the opportunity presents itself or you see other opportunities, we want to be able to advance this. And I think with Senator Heinrich's help and his understanding, we can do that. But it's hard it's hard, as a former tourism director, let me just tell you, it's hard to exaggerate the value of the incredible resources you all have. So any thoughts you have on that, I'd be grateful.
I'll judiciously stay away from opining on the legislation, but I will say thank you very much. I think 5 agencies have that authority already, including the Bureau of Reclamation, which has a similar mission, although our recreation mission is significantly larger. I think we are the largest, have the largest number of campgrounds, or we're second to the Forest Service. I can't remember exactly, but bottom line is it takes some pressure off of our budget, and I think greatly has the capacity to provide improved services and facilities for those using those recreation facilities. So we will look forward to taking a look at that legislation, but thank you for thinking of us, because that's a very important part of our mission.
Well, and I know that the support groups, the nonprofits, the people that use the assets are going to be very grateful as well. So we'll work on getting that done without your opinion, but you're grateful for your support. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Secretary Connor, General Spellman, great seeing you both again. And I want to start off by discussing 2 priority flood control projects in the state of Arizona. Both projects have been authorized for construction, and both have received full federal funding, but neither project has been able to break ground yet. And I understand that the Los Angeles District continues to work with the local sponsors to get these projects shovel-ready, but I would appreciate a commitment from both of you that the projects don't get off track. So first one is the Little Colorado River Winslow Levee project, and this project would provide long overdue flood protection to the entire town of Winslow, Arizona. So will you both commit to work with the Los Angeles District to ensure a design agreement is signed by the end of July, if not sooner?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We are on track to sign that design agreement with Navajo County in July.
And Mr. Connor?
Absolutely, incredibly important project from a lot of different perspectives.
Well, thank you. And then the second one is Rio de Flag, which would help to comprehensively address the flood risk in Flagstaff, Arizona. And this region struggled in recent years with significant flooding that's caused by the wildfire burn scars up in the hills, and the Corps has been working on this project since the early 2000s. So will you both commit, again, to work with the Los Angeles District to ensure that the district and the local sponsor have the resources they need to complete all of the real estate transactions by this September?
Yes, sir. Certainly, we'll put all the resources we can. With the first 3 phases, as you know, of this project is complete. Flagstaff is having some challenges that we're working through on 9 remaining parcels with the BNSF railroad. So we're meeting regularly. We're putting all of our experts in the room to try to expedite this negotiation as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
I'm committed to also helping work through those remaining issues. I think they're in a better position than they've been historically to work through those real estate issues, and we will continue to monitor and support.
That's great. If we meet this timeline, this project's going to be ready for construction next year. And if we face delays, it might not be able to break ground until 2025 at the earliest. So thank you for that. And then to Mr. Connor, I wanted to discuss an issue that I understand you've done a lot of work on, and that's drought in the western United States. And as you know, this year has been it's been great. We've got a wetter winter than usual, and that has resulted in a significant snowpack, but we still face a significant drought. And the solution to this problem is clear. We need to invest in some long-term conservation efforts, which will help prevent water loss, would also help to increase storage capacity, and we need to develop some new sources of water. And last July, you wrote a memo spelling out the existing authorities that the Army Corps had to respond to drought challenges. And we then built upon that memo in WRDA 2022, which provided some more authority for the Corps to respond to drought and water conservation needs. So, Mr. Connor, in light of the new provisions included in WRDA 2022, do you plan to update your July 2022 memo on drought authorities?
Thank you for the question. As a thresholdman, I share your view. I was Commissioner of Reclamation in 2011 when we had a record year, and then by 13 and 14, we were doing drought contingency planning again. So 1 year's bounty is not going to sustain the system overall. So with respect to our role as part of a whole government effort to build drought resilience, yes, we will. It's that memo directing the Corps to develop a long-term strategy is a living, breathing document that we will continue to update with new authorities. We have some specific approaches right now using the Environmental Infrastructure Program, using operations and the ability to change operations to provide more water, to look at how ecosystem restoration might take pressure off water supply in our tribal programs and planning programs. So we are moving forward, but we will incorporate those new authorities into a long-term strategy. Yes, Senator.
Well, thank you. And if the Corps was to identify a new, let's say, a new START project with drought reduction benefits, how well would that project compete for funding within the Corps and from OMB compared to a new START project which fit within one of the more traditional areas of the Corps, like things like flood control and navigation?
I think in general, Senator, it would compete well because our goal would be moving forward to integrate multiple benefits of any particular project, whether it's large infrastructure or just how we manage water. How are we going to not only provide better flood control, look at how we might restore environment as part of that flood control by slowing down water, letting it spread out where there is land, but then how awesome might we use that to recharge aquifers or to provide additional water supply. I think the key to improving the ability to compete for limited budget resources is to have those multiple benefits incorporated in any part of our projects.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Senator Bozeman.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you all being here, appreciate your hard work. Recently, the Air Force selected Ebbing Air Force Base in Fort Smith, Arkansas to serve as the home of the F-35 training mission for our nation's partners and allies. This mission is being deemed critical to our nation's national security as well as our partner nation's national security. Those aren't my words, those come from the very top on down. The Corps of Engineers in Little Rock, whom we enjoy working with, is responsible for the new construction for the mission at Ebbing and will be tasked to meet a really very tight turnarounds. Will you both commit to giving the Little Rock District the resources it needs from the entire Corps of Engineers enterprise to meet their deadlines?
Yes, sir. This falls under our military construction portfolio. Sir, the important part here is we've been getting $10 million from the Air Force to develop the area development plan. So that will inform the detailed designs moving forward and really help get down to the level of detail we need to on the schedule. But yes, sir, you have my commitment to give them everything they need to deliver this important program.
Good.
Senator, any way the Civil Works program can support the military side of the House, we're happy to do that.
Good. Well, thank you all very much. I knew that was the case, but again, this is something that the deadlines are tight, and it's just going to take everybody working together. The other thing is I'd like to also voice my support for the Kramer-Heinrich bill. I'm a co-sponsor of that too, and really been working with that for several years, but you've got problems at your parks. And you do a great job in the sense, it's just such especially now, with people, I think, wanting to get out more after the pandemic and all that's occurred. But you've got troubles right now in Arkansas, throughout the Midwest. You've got a lot of flooding. Most of those campgrounds now are underwater. The Mississippi campground, the list goes on and on. You've got a lot of maintenance that has been deferred. You can fix things now, and it costs some money. You can defer that, and it costs more money, and then it comes to a point where you have to replace it, and it costs a lot of money. So I do think that's it's a bill that would make a lot of difference. If maybe 80% is too high, we can work with that or whatever. But I do think that whatever money we did in that, you'd actually receive benefit from. The cost benefit would be very, very good. Plus, you'd be able to update the campgrounds and make it such where you'd have even more usage. I think it would actually pay for itself. But look at it, and again, your support, if somehow that could be acquired, would be very helpful.
Thank you very much for recognizing what an important part of this mission and the value of those additional resources might provide. I did visit some recreational facilities last summer. You would not believe the lengths that our committed rangers go to to try and ensure that the visitors have the best experience possible and have good facilities, and we should make it a little easier for them, quite frankly.
No, I understand.
And sir, I would just echo that commitment. This is an important part of our mission. I don't know the details of the legislation, but anything that supports our recreation function, full support.
The other thing is, right now we're in the process, I'm the ranking member on agriculture, we're in the process of trying to pass a farm bill, and we're going to get it passed this year. But it comes to mind 40% of the products in Arkansas are exported. That's true throughout most of the country. And so our inland waterways, our ports and harbors are so vital. Can you talk a little bit about, again, the importance of that flow of trade and what that means, not only to those farmers, but also the end users? I mean, right now we've got the cheapest, safest food supply of any place in the world. You know, what does that do to cost and things like that?
Yes, sir. I would just say in your state, you have tows, barges that sometimes are 15 barges together. And just to keep the analogy going, 15 barges, that's 1,000 trucks, 1,000 diesel engines, 1,000 drivers that you don't need because of the movement of cargo on the waterway. And so it just drives the cost down for goods and increases the speed of those goods getting to market. As I said earlier, these are national treasures, and we appreciate all the support we get from Congress in maintaining and upgrading those.
Just a quick point, the old saying, we know the value of water when the well runs dry. Well, we know the value of the inland waterway system when the Mississippi River has low flows.
Last summer where I wanted to just jump in it and claim that I could swim across it.
Yes, significant immediate economic impact from drought when the Mississippi River is that low and we can't efficiently move product, and that reverberates to the agricultural committee. So we are not looking just at how we manage the system in conjunction with industry. I think we had great communication and resources to keep the system dredged and moving, but we also want to do lessons learned and make sure we're continuing to try and ensure that the next drought doesn't have as deep an impact.
Right. And it is remarkable. Now the Mississippi, we've actually closed off part of it because it's so high. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Senator Bozeman, thank you. It's not every day we have the chairs of both the Environment and Public Works Committee and the ranking member of this committee, along with the chair of the Ag Committee and the ranking member of the Ag Committee. It's a special day. Good to see you both. All right, Senator Kavanaugh, you're on.
Well, good morning. It's wonderful to be with you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Bozeman and I think we're on a tour today, or all week now, talking about farm bills and forestry and all kinds of wonderful things, and public works here in the important infrastructure. So it's great, and it's wonderful to see you, Assistant Secretary. It's wonderful to see you, Lieutenant Colonel. We appreciate so much your work, and I first have to start with a thank you, because when you look at the Corps' 2024 budget request, I see a lot of wins for Michigan. I appreciate it very much. 2 new starts to identify and address flood risks in both Southeast Michigan and Midland County, 2 important projects that I was pleased to author as part of WRDA in 2022. And also SULACs that we have talked about so many times. Thank you for working with me to ensure that this critical project has a line item this year in the President's budget. I do want to say, though, that as grateful as I am, I note this funding falls short of the full 2024 capability. And so you and I want to get this done, I know. Assistant Secretary Connor, as you know, any unscheduled outage at the Sioux Locks would devastate the economy. And so I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure we're in a good place on the appropriation side, but I need your help to make sure that this is in the work plan. And I wondered if you might speak to that. Can I continue to count on you to make this vital project in the funding a priority and to help keep it on schedule?
Yes, Senator. Sioux Locks, for all the reasons we've discussed and that you've identified today, will continue to be a very high priority. We've tried to plug the gap with those cost overruns through additional resources from IIJA, the work plan money we had earlier this year, the budget requests, and we will continue to work with you. We've got the contracts identified with the options. We want to minimize the additional prospects of cost overruns by trying to meet those options. So we will continue to be in very close coordination with you, Senator.
Well, thank you so much. And as we know, they've been working hard. And when we talk about costs, inflation is not our friend on this and has been a real challenge. But I think they've been doing a good job and working really hard on this and efficiently. On this. Speaking of projects that are critical to the Great Lakes, let's talk Brandon Road, Lock and Dam. And so Lieutenant General Spellman, you know that this is the linchpin to halting the terrible Asian carp from getting into the Great Lakes. I have a fish and a lock that keep me up every night here as to what will happen. I feel like we're on borrowed time on both, frankly. Been working on this project for nearly a decade, having secured $226 million in the infrastructure law funding. We increased the federal cost share as part of WRDA. I thought we were finally ready for construction. However, now it's my understanding that the construction phase of the project is on hold until the Army Corps and the state sign a project partnership agreement. And unfortunately, the carp, they are ticking time. They don't wait. The fish aren't waiting around for project agreements. So, Lieutenant General Spellman, given the stakes, is the Brandon Road project a priority? And if so, do I have your commitment to do whatever it takes to get this PPA signed as soon as possible so construction can begin?
Yes, ma'am. This is absolutely a priority for us for all the reasons that you've outlined. Committing to do whatever it takes is a bit outside of my authority at the moment. As I mentioned in my opening statement, delivery of these projects, it's a team sport. There are several things that the non-federal sponsor is asking from the Corps that would require legislative changes and even policy changes. So we're sending a team out from our headquarters this month to meet with our non-federal sponsors, and I just want to make sure that they have a firm understanding of what our left and right limits are statutorily and then from a policy perspective. But we want to get to that signed PPA so we can unlock that $225 million that you secured for us in getting to construction.
Well, I'm happy to work with you in any way possible in communicating with the states and so on. It's got to be clear what you can and can't do, that the money that we have, and that we really are, this is a ticking time bomb. We have to move, and so and we're ready to move. So I'll look forward with you to getting that done.
Thanks, ma'am.
All right, Senator Stabenow, thanks so much for joining us and working with us on, as you put together the agriculture bill. You and Senator Bozeman, we look forward to making sure we're joined at the hip. Thank you. All right, Senator Mullen, you're up. Thanks. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you guys for being here. General, I'll start with you. As you know, Section 8358 of the Water Resource Development Act of 2022 directly provides the city of Bartlesville in Oklahoma the opportunity to secure water storage rights from Copan Lake, also in Oklahoma. General Spellman, would you agree that a growing city such as Bartlesville, like many growing cities in the country, needs affordable, that's the key word there, affordable access to water storage to continue their growth?
Yes, Senator, absolutely.
I want to bring something to your attention then. As I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but Lake Copan was built in the 1980s. 1981, the Corps acquired 4,750 acre-feet of water storage for Lake Copan. And that was 40 years ago, right? Now the city of Bartlesville is trying to purchase that from you guys. In 2020, they also worked out a deal with the Corps engineer to buy water from a lake at roughly $81 per acre foot. Right now, they're currently in negotiations wanting to buy that 4,750 feet of water from the Corps engineers, but the Corps engineers want to charge $1,181 per acre foot. Would you consider that affordable?
Sir, this is what the the formula for these pricing constructs, it's not core policy, it's not a policy from the Secretary. The formula is given to us in the 1958 Water Supply Act.
The way that I understand that, sir, is that the Army Corps engineers can agree to charge less, but you don't normally do. But you do have the flexibility to do so.
I'm not aware of any flexibility to stray from the legislation, sir. I'd have to look into that. The statute is very clear on the pricing methodology.
So how do you suggest moving forward in this? Because when you're trying to recover the cost of a lake that was obviously really expensive to build, it's sitting there for 40 years. No one's purchased it because no one can afford it. The taxpayer dollars are holding the bill. What's our solution?
Yeah, sir, unfortunately, today it requires legislation, piecemeal legislation.
What is the legislation you're needing for flexibility?
So the WRDA provisions from 20 and 22 for Lake Bartlesville have reduced that cost to your water suppliers to $74 an acre foot. So that's the maximum amount that we can charge. I would tell you that I have 145 water supply storage contracts like this across the country. The average cost per acre foot is $300 per acre foot. And so I would just say when you compare that with other water suppliers across the country, this is good.
$300 is fine. We're talking about 1,000.
Yeah. So
nearly $1,200.
And sir, I have some ideas on how we can go about this moving forward. With the problem here is there was a large renovation contract associated with Lake Copan, and unfortunately, a small percentage of a large figure gets spread across all the users, and so that's what they were experiencing. We've seen this in other corners as well. I think there's other ways to go about this, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Well, that's what the conversation is about. And sir, if you have questions or ideas about this, I'm looking for solutions that this committee can bring forward, because this isn't just going to be a one situation off on Bartlesville. This is something that's going to be facing a lot of municipalities moving forward because the cost of everything is skyrocketing. So what is it that the committee needs to be looking at, legislatively speaking, to fix this?
Senator, I just wanted to add on to what General Spellman, we're happy to look at the legislative limitations here, and I trust the General has already looked at that, so we will get back to you and let you know specifically the issue. But to your point on policy, I agree. Any revenue is better than no revenue.
Right.
And we want to maximize the use of existing infrastructure to serve communities in different ways, because that's going to be the cheapest and less environmentally damaging approach to, for that reason.
This has been sitting for over 40 years and hasn't been sold because no one can afford it. So this would be a perfect opportunity to show how we can work together with the agencies to create that flexibility. And I know the chairman and the ranker would both agree that this is something that needs to be addressed.
There's good policy here to be made, Senator.
Okay, if you could get back to us and let us know what we can do on our side to give you that flexibility. Look forward to hearing from you. I yield back.
Thanks, Senator. Senator Capito, if you have another question or two you'd like to ask or comments, please do.
Yeah, thank you. I have one question, just a comment. First of all, thanks to both of you. These are massive amounts of dollars, but as you can tell, the interest from the committee, massive amount of impacts in communities in all kinds of ways. Assistant Secretary, you mentioned the word reprogramming, and that brought back some, I would say, not the greatest memories of some experiences I've had in past years with the Corps. I've been here a while. Does reprogramming, here's my concern. We have all these projects, and you reach a point of cost overruns. We've already talked about things are more expensive than they think. Then we think they're getting delayed for one reason or another. So you're looking at maybe 6 projects. I'm just using this as an example, 6 projects. And all of a sudden, project number 6 is starting to fail, but these other 5 are moving. And as the general said, completing projects is really important to the Corps. Who makes the decision to pull the funding then from project number 6 that's flailing over here? And is this what you mean by reprogramming? You reprogram away from what we would think would be a project that's going to be happening in our state into maybe another project within our state or within our core district. Is that what reprogramming means to you?
Senator, I think my staff always seizes up when I use the word reprogramming because of those specific issues, and there's technical aspects of it too. But yes, fundamentally, I think we need to look at where a project is not proceeding, and as I highlighted in my earlier statement, where we have had discussions with stakeholders who have involvement in a series of projects, they may be the ones suggesting we should be proceeding. So bottom line is, I don't know if reprogramming was the right word, but are we looking at where we haven't yet allocated resources, whether a project is going to proceed, and whether we need to look at trying to move funds to try and complete a project so that we can, move forward and fund other projects in the future? Yes, I am thinking about that. That authority rests in my office, but it doesn't work unless I'm transparent with all of you in any of the interests involved.
Well, I think that's probably why I seize up, because I think that the decision that is made within your office, whereas we've already made the decision legislatively to move in a certain direction. So I do think communication and transparency is the key here. I don't think, I'm not naive enough to think that, well, we gave you all the money you're ever going to need, and you need to do all these projects, and life is never going to change there. I realize there's change orders, there's all kinds of things that you find in the process of different projects that maybe were unexpected, or circumstances change, or we can't find the workforce, whatever the issue is. But I do believe that the transparency with which you move forward on these decisions is absolutely critical, because from a public servant point of view, as an elected leader, when you go to the mayor of your small town and say, we're going to have a levee here, and we're going to solve your flooding problem, and then all of a sudden you go back to the Corps and they go, well, we had to go ahead and move that to another project without our knowledge, or without at least not. I understand maybe we don't being included in the project reprogramming issues, but at least having us aware of it, we can soften the blow. I mean, I don't want to have to do that. I want everything that we have planned for and that we've put into legislation and we've worked with you all on to be able to work to completion, but I do understand the realities. Sometimes that makes it more difficult. So I would thank you both. Your open communication with me and certainly as the ranking member on this committee has been very much appreciated, and I appreciate all the good hard work that you do every day. And I'm going to take my leave and do my constitutional duty, which is to vote on the floor of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks so much. I'm going to ask a couple of questions maybe for the record, and then go vote as well. And I think the first one would be for Secretary Connor. And Secretary Connor, as you well know, Congress included some critical new authorities in WRDA 2022 to increase assistance to disadvantaged communities. I was pleased to see that the budget focuses on environmental justice, and that the Corps has issued guidance for WRDA 2020 and for WRDA 2022 authorities to support the disadvantaged communities. Will you take a minute or two to explain for us the significance of this recent guidance and how you plan to prioritize devoting resources to disadvantaged communities? Just go ahead.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. These authorities are incredibly important and allow us to do good work on a broader scale than I think we would otherwise be able to do. First of all, bipartisan infrastructure law, Congress gave us express direction to not just be beholden to highest benefit cost ratios. That allowed us to choose projects to fund that would broaden the benefits to communities on a larger scale. Second of all, we want to improve outreach in our existing programs, whether they're the planning assistance to states, floodplain management services, tribal partnership program. We are trying to use the guidance that I provided to broaden our outreach so we can do work with more communities. And then finally, the specific provisions in WRDA 2020, and those we're moving out with guidance, economically disadvantaged communities definition, so that we can use that to implement the programs that Congress has already provided funding for. This is the pilot program to do investigations for economically disadvantaged communities. We've got $30 million in the bipartisan infrastructure law waiting to be released after we finalize that guidance, which is significant guidance, so we've got to have a process there, as well as the CAP projects that are going to use that funding. So the direction has been great. I think we're moving forward with our smaller programs, and we're trying to ensure we're taking the provisions that you've enacted and run with them.
All right, thank you. I am going to leave another question for the record. It deals with economic growth and project delivery. And I'll just submit that one for the record. And before I turn over the gavel to Senator Markey to close us out, I'm going to give just a real short closing statement with some housekeeping, if we don't mind. Every state is significantly, maybe dramatically affected by the work that you lead across the country. And to all the men and women who report to you, look to you for leadership, we want to thank you, and we want to thank them for doing extraordinary things. Every member of this committee has a great interest in the work that you do, and really great gratitude. And the same is true of all 100 senators. We appreciate very much what you do with your lives in serving our country and our respective states. Before we adjourn, before I give the gavel to Senator Markey, I just want to mention that senators will be allowed to, invited rather, to submit written questions for the record by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, May 17th, which is 2 weeks from today. And we'll compile those questions. We'll send them to you, and we'll ask you to reply by Wednesday, May 31st. And I'm not going to adjourn this hearing. I'm going to hand the gavel to Senator Markey. And when he finishes with his questions, if you would just adjourn the hearing, that would be great. Thank you. And again, our thanks to all. It was great to see you. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And there is a roll call on the floor of the Senate right now, which is why the members were scrambling to get over there. I'm running back over from the Senate floor to be here to take the gavel from Chairman Copper. So it's great to see you again, Assistant Secretary Connor, General Scott. Good to see you. General Spellman. I'm sorry. Excuse me. The Army Corps owns the Cape Cod bridges, which are nearly 90 years old. The bridges are structurally deficient, and they are in need of desperate replacement. And the Bourne and the Sagamore bridges are the only route for people to drive to and from Cape Cod. Say that again. It's the only way for people to drive to and from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And the federal government, almost 90 years ago, built 2 bridges, which make it possible for that to be possible. And we thank the federal government for building those 2 bridges back then in the height of the New Deal. Great work by President Roosevelt, great vision for these public works projects. In the same way they were building the TVA, they were building these other facilities all across the country, especially for electrical generation. In Massachusetts, they built 2 bridges for us. And my colleagues in the Massachusetts congressional delegation and I, right now, are extremely concerned that if a severe storm strikes the Cape, residents and visitors could be unable to evacuate the Cape and the islands. It's the only way off. And replacing these bridges is not just a matter of convenience, it is a matter of safety. So, Assistant Secretary Connor, do you agree that replacing the Cape Cod bridges is a critical safety project?
Senator, I do.
No, thank you. And obviously, we're very fortunate that Hurricane Sandy did not hit us. But if it did, it would have devastated Cape Cod, would have just devastated it. And people would have been told to evacuate, to get out before Cape Cod was inundated. And we obviously need these bridges to be replaced in order for that safety concern to be dealt with. So the Army Corps owns these bridges. These are federal bridges. The Corps and the federal government have a financial responsibility here. In fact, in 2020, the Corps estimated that rehabilitating the bridges over the next 50 years would cost nearly $800 million. So just for the Army, for the Corps, for the federal government, which owns the bridges, would cost them $800 million just to maintain them over the next 50 years. And Massachusetts has agreed to take ownership of the new Cape Cod bridges as long as the Corps contributes its fair share to help to replace them. And the stakes are clear. If the Corps doesn't help replace the bridges, it will have to spend even more money to maintain them over the next 50 years. So Assistant Secretary Connor, would giving the bridges to Massachusetts save money for the Corps in the long run, in your opinion?
In my opinion, yes, it would. We would no longer have the ongoing O&M and significant rehab costs into the future related to the bridges. So we think this is a good approach.
O&M is operations
Operation
and
maintenance.
That
That's correct.
The Army Corps otherwise would have to contribute to keeping those bridges functional. And I agree with you. You know, the Corps' most fiscally responsible action is to help replace the Cape Cod bridges now. And we need to do this project in a smart way. Both Massachusetts and the Corps want Massachusetts to manage the bridges project. After all, the Corps specializes in water projects, not building bridges. This is an anomaly for the Corps, these bridges. I don't know, is there another instance across the whole country where the Corps owns the bridges?
We own more bridges than I can remember, but it's a significant part of the portfolio, and you're exactly right. It is not our specialty. It's come with our inland waterways and intercoastal waterways.
So, Assistant Secretary Connor, does the Corps have significant experience in building bridges over the last 20 or 30 years?
Not in the last 20, 30 years. We have experience, but that's experience that others have much better.
Yeah. And most of the people who had the experience are already retired from the Corps, who work for the Corps. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is something that would have to be developed. So it makes no sense, in other words, for the Corps to construct these new bridges. Unfortunately, the Corps lacks the authority to transfer money to Massachusetts for this project, and that makes it difficult for the Corps to help fund this project and allow Massachusetts to construct the new bridges. And I'm glad the Corps proposed legislative language to address this issue. With a narrow fix, we can construct new bridges in a smart, fiscally responsible way. So, Assistant Secretary Connor, does the legislative language proposed by the Corps give the Corps sweeping new authority to issue grants?
This is not a grant, Senator. The authority that we have submitted would just provide us a mechanism to provide money to an entity that's much better positioned to replace the bridges, take us out of that business, and I think it's unique to this situation with bridges. It's larger than just Cape Cod, but it's specific to this particular aspect of the portfolio, which we shouldn't have.
And I think that's right, and I urge my colleagues to support this small legislative tweak and ensure that this critical safety project can proceed. I thank you, Assistant Secretary Connor, and your entire team for all your help with this project that goes back years. But time is of the essence. We have to begin the job of actually replacing these bridges, and we thank you for your assistance. Let me turn and recognize Senator Sullivan for his
Thank you,
round of
Mr.
questions.
Chairman, and Secretary Connor, General Spellman, thank you, gentlemen. I just want to begin by doing a shout out to both of you. I think you're both doing a really good job. It's not an easy position to be in, really important position. You know, I'm on the armed services too, so I was saying I kind of have dual oversight of you guys because you're Army and EPW, Armed Services. But so I appreciate you and your team, the hard work that you guys are doing. It's much appreciated, much needed for our country, certainly for Alaska. So thanks. Both of you have, in my view, really good teams. Secretary Connor, I just wanted to reiterate, you probably know where I'm going with this. I think I've asked you to reiterate this 50 times. But I'm just doing it one more time just to be safe. Because one of, and I'm going to talk about Donlin, one of the hallmarks, and it's for both of you gentlemen, but one of the hallmarks, unfortunately hallmarks in my view of the Biden administration, particularly for big projects in my state that have gone through massive permitting by professional staff from the previous administration, actually from the previous two administrations, Obama, Trump. We got things done, completed, records of decisions. And this administration loves to come back to Alaska and go, you know what, we're going to reopen this. We're going to reopen that. We're going to reopen this. They come up with excuses. I mean, it's Ambler, it's Anwar, it's Tongass, it's Willow, it's King Cove Road. I mean, it's just nonstop. Decisions that have been made, and they come back. Usually say, oh, the previous administration didn't consult enough. By the way, Secretary Connor, you and I have talked about, most of these are strongly supported by the Alaska Native people, these projects I just listed. And so when you have an administration talking about environmental justice, racial equity, they seem to always forget indigenous people of Alaska. I know you haven't, but I'm just making the point because, and by the way, this is a broader issue. I mean, it turns America into a banana republic, right? If we can't rely on previous administrations that have done the due diligence, made records of decision, and then now we reopen them 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, I mean, we might as well be Venezuela, right? Chills investment opportunities. So, Mr. Secretary, you and I have talked ad nauseum, and Administrator Regan of the EPA and Assistant Administrator Fox. You guys have all, and I appreciate, made commitments that, hey, the Donlin permits were issued 5 years ago, and you see no reason to reopen those. And as you know, there's some radical lower 48 environmental groups who are now trying to do this. Our native leaders call them eco-colonialists, right? Lower 48 groups that come up and tell the native people what they need to do. Kind of second wave of colonialism, they call it eco-colonialists. It's a term that I think really fits well. But the Donlin project, as you know, is supported by the regional ANC. It's on their land. Can I just get one more commitment from you guys? And I know you've done it a lot, but you know, things are starting to percolate. Once again, these groups have a lot of power. Media loves them. That this important project, that you see no reason to reopen these permit decisions. I know you got to consult, right? But, you know, if they file a lawsuit, just defend it. Defend it. That's your job, in my view. General, you and I have talked about it, Mr. Secretary. I just want a quick commitment on that. To his credit, the EPA administrator just a couple weeks ago, and Assistant Administrator Fox came in right here. Same said, Senator, we're with you. No, we don't see any reason to do that. I just like that commitment from you. It's important because this is all percolating. And 5 years ago, we had a permit issued, and you know, Banana Republicville if we start opening these things up. General?
No, sir, we, on the Donlin project, do we have a valid permit? I'm not aware of any discussions to reopen.
Thank you. No reason to do that, 5 years old?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Secretary?
Senator, as we've talked about before, nothing's changed with respect to my views on Donlin, and that's after we've done consultation. We've talked with proponents, opponents. It's in litigation now. We're defending the lawsuit.
Good. Thank you very much for that, both of you. I appreciate it. You guys kept your word, and it's not just important for Alaska and the native people there. It's important for America. 5 years, and you're not going to reopen a permit. It's just you won't be able to get anything done in this country. Let me just end, Mr. Chairman, real quick. Port of Nome, You guys have done a great job. I can't thank you enough. That is a nationally significant, important project, first strategic Arctic port for America. The Corps has done a great job. Ms. Secretary, you've done a great job. I'm sure you're aware that WRDA last year modified the cost-sharing formula for that deep draft port, which the Navy needs, Coast Guard needs. It'll help the communities out there. During our recent meeting, Major General Graham had stated that we can anticipate full support from the administration in future years, you know, moving and phasing. Can I just continue to get your commitment on that, given that the cost share changed?
Yes, sir. We appreciate certainly the $250 million that we received in the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're getting ready. We're doing the design on the West Causeway extension right now, and looking forward to awarding that contract in 2024, and then also working on the design of the deepening for the channel. Yes, sir. You have our commitment. Important
Ms.
project.
Secretary.
I would just echo what General Spellman just said. We're committed to moving that forward. It increases the challenges with respect to the funding needs, obviously from the cost share change, but we're committed to moving forward with the project.
Great. Thanks again, both of you. I think your teams are doing a great job for Alaska, the country, and we really appreciate it.
I thank Senator Sullivan. I note Senator Wicker is here. If you have any other comments you'd like to make. Okay, beautiful. So with that and the thanks of the committee, we have completed this period of questioning and answering of our great witnesses today. We thank you both for your service and for all of those who serve with you in the Army Corps. We thank you so much. And with that, and with, again, all of the procedural niceties that Chairman Copper have already laid out in terms of the rights of the committee and the request to the Army Corps to respond to questions in writing, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.